To the New York Augmented Reality Meetup. It's good to see so many of you, um, new folks and old returners, returnees. Thank you for joining. Hey, Duke Q, thanks for the thumbs up. It's good to have you here. Feel free, host, to admit people from the waiting room as well. Yu Hata, thank you for joining, I think from Japan. I don't know what time it is there, but I'm sure it's late, I would assume. But it's cool.
Or early.
Or early,
I
yeah.
think it's pretty early.
Yeah. Is it the morning there?
Yeah, they're like 11, 12 hours ahead of us.
Oh, wow.
Maybe
Okay.
10.
Wow. Okay. Nice. So maybe it's a good time. It's a good time. All right. Nice. Um, we had to lock the video. It's been like a couple of months now, but just for proper precautions, we had just some crazy spam one meeting or two meetings, and it just like we had to lock the video and the mic. Maybe we'll open it up if things seem calm. I just wanted to mention that. But thank you for joining tonight. I will try to do latest news. Then we have presentations from Rohildev, Francis Chen, James Ashley, and David Gino, which we're really excited about. As you may have seen, I took a step back from doing the monthly meetups until last month. They've been consecutive for every month for a couple of years. I'm going to take a step back, focus more on Unity development. So they're probably going to be a little more casual. I also send out the Augmented Report newsletter, which I announced last week that I'm going to be stopping. But if you have any questions about news over the past couple of years, or you want information on how to find good news in augmented reality or anything like that, just reach out to me. I'm happy to discuss that. Or if you want to like make your own newsletter, things like that, just reach out to me. I'm happy to discuss. Some news. I could send links out after. There's a Google's geospatial challenge, which is a really cool API with Google Maps. They have a hackathon, and then the Pico Dev Jam also has a hackathon, so you could check those out. Both AR related. Unity Awards. You could vote for the Unity Awards. So if you Google Unity Awards, that'll be announced at Unity Unite in November. Lens Fest, Snap Lens Fest is November 9th. I'll send links afterwards. I'll try. And then MEMS and Sensors Executive Congress is in Phoenix on November 6th. New funding, Mojo Vision raised about 43 million. These numbers could be wrong. I don't have any notes here, but Imagine was completed the acquisition from Samsung for 200 million more. I don't know exactly. Look it up. And 3DM raised, I think, $11 million. News. FCC greenlights super fast Wi-Fi tethering for AR and VR, which is cool. Apple, you can now try out Vision Pro in New York City. Quest 3 came out, and there's some new cool experiences, like this Mario one. Okay. Snap shut down their advertising group, Aries, to help businesses create AR experiences. They shut it down after a year, which is upsetting. Layoffs at Epic Games, upsetting also. They laid a bunch of their workforce off. Unity, the CEO of Unity retired after the pricing saga that went on, and a lot of developers were upset, but he's no longer. I don't think he's there anymore. And then Magic Leap has a new CEO. So Peggy Johnson, who was the previous CEO, stepped down, and Ross Rosenberg, who was at Bain Capital, is replacing Peggy Johnson. And then on a positive note, Monster Hunter now, Niantic hit 10 million downloads. Okay. So that's really exciting and good news for the industry. And without further ado, I'm excited to move on to tonight's presentations with speakers joining us from across the industry, turning the impossible into a reality. And first, I'd like to introduce Rohil, our first speaker. He's the founder and CEO at Nimo Planet Inc., creator of the world's first spatial computer and OS for productivity, passionate about design hardware and software to solve real-world problems. Previously, he was the mind behind the gesture-based smart ring, Naya. Thank you, Rohil, for joining us.
Thank you, Andy. Thank you so much. Good to meet you, everyone. It's like excited time for us. Last couple of years, we've been working on something new. Just roll out last week, Nimo, the first version of Nimo. So let me share my screen and quickly give you an intro, then I will show you the product first, right? That's the immediate goal. Give me a second. All right. Can you able to see my screen?
Yeah, it looks good.
Yes.
All right. All right. All right. So we designed Nimo specifically for productivity. And one of the core reason was this all started back in 2017 when I was running my first company. Whenever I travel, I mostly carry iPad because that's more portable than laptop. But I found all these devices, if they are more and more portable, then we are compromising productivity. Creating a PPT from smartphone, it's really, really hard. So I used to think, why don't we have a device which is portable like smartphone, but it also gives us the full workspace so I can work better from anywhere, which is also one of the element, eliminate the need of all these physical multiple screens. So that's one of the reason from 2017 we start building on the glasses. But the crazy thing is like the first idea was different. The first idea was how we can attach a small projector with a phone, and that project lights to a non-electronic glass that simulate the lights or direct lights to your eye. It was a crazy idea. Physics does not allow that. So we start making the full glasses. So when we started, we look into the operating system space, what we can take from the market and we can build that experience, but none of them was access at that time. And even now, so we start building a custom OS as well. So all these years, we gone through multiple versions of prototype and learned a lot. The last version in 2022, we designed, which was a fully standalone version of Nimo, which had the XR1 processor, all the battery, Wi-Fi, everything on the temple. And we did a lot of demo. What we learned was people want more lighter version. People want something that they can wear long period of time comfortably, especially that we are focusing productivity. One of the priorities, like it should not just make them discomfortable and take it off. So we decided to take all the computing from the frame and create a super cute and portable computer, still the full computer that people could able to put in their pocket. So that's how the Nimo core came from mid of 2022. I would like to quickly play the video. So who doesn't see the video can have a quick look. Cool. So that's the full experience of the operating system that we designed, and we call it like Nimo OS. And the entire OS is running inside this super small computer, and which is a little bigger than the airport case. And this connect with the Nimo glasses. We have two versions of Nimo. So one is it's a waveguide based. The goal is to make the sleekest, super portable computer that people can carry in their pocket and get the work done from anywhere. So we put a lot of effort to make the full system super sleek, right? And that give you up to 6 screens and help to access multiple productivity and entertainment applications. So we also using another version of the glass, which is a bird bath based. This is the one. So this one we are mainly using for internal development testing and all, because the bird bath version is easy to make, manufacture, and prototype, and especially to deploy for more demo and testing. But the one that we are working for the productivity, which is this one that we're gonna ship, which will be like much more advanced and a little more expensive. So that's the whole story so far. We are pushing hard to ship more units to our early customers. We already shipped to a couple of our enterprise customers and individual customers so far. And going forward, we're gonna continue that. And also we are fundraising Series A that help us to mass produce and shipping to more and more customers.
Awesome. Would you
Yep.
like to, could you handle some Q&A, Rohil?
Yep, absolutely.
Awesome. So if you have any questions, feel free to put it in the chat or send it to me or Barry. I don't think I'm not sure Barry's here, but just feel free to put them in the chat. So when do you anticipate the product coming to market?
So we are expecting to close our Series A in next 3 months approximately, and from that, yeah, it'll be like mid of 2024 approximately. But even if it's get delayed a little more, we gonna keep shipping the pre-production units to our early customers and some of the new enterprises and individuals. So the idea is like roll out more units, even though we are not stepping into production in another 6 months.
Awesome, cool. Another question we have is there depth sensing and do you have the ability to place 3D content, or is it mainly 2D?
Okay, so we made the entire operating system stereo. So when you experience, we have a home screen, super minimal home screen. So the home screen will be in one depth in the physical space. And when you look down a little bit, there will be the control panel. So the control panel will be in a different depth. So likewise, if I open PowerPoint in the center workspace, I can make the PowerPoint as super close to my eye. And if I have another apps in rest of the workspaces, for example, Excel or LinkedIn or web browser or anything, that I can make like a little far. So we created the full OS stereo. We can also support 3D movies inside our workspace. So it's like any side-by-side video, we are creating a player. So on the player, any side-by-side video if you play, we can experience the 3D. So that goes into any other 3D elements as well, any Unity based apps or any other.
That's awesome. Great. Thank you, Roel. Question from David. David O, great video. Can you go into detail on Mac support?
The Mac support?
Yes.
Oh yeah, sure. So the way we design Nimo Core, so we have 2 ports. One over here, this can connect with the laptops or power pack, anything, and this one for the display. So the one that connect with the laptop, we will have a client on the Mac or Windows that can help to stream application from Mac or Windows into Nimo workspace. So it's like on the workspaces that we have, one of the workspace I can use apps that coming from Mac or Windows. other workspaces can still have the Nimo native applications. That's one way. The second way is like people can also use remote desktop, Azure remote desktop or Citrix or any other virtual desktops. We are also working with a company. They could help with more web-based virtual machines. It's more like, feels like the app is installed and present in the OS, but it's actually coming from the cloud.
Awesome. Thank you. Laura wants to know, is there any video showing the glasses being used?
Oh yeah, so we're gonna release a couple of videos in the coming days, especially Dilmer. He experienced this today and he took a lot of videos. So that's gonna release soon.
Awesome. Thank you. Let's see. Are you raising any funding rounds soon?
Yeah, we are raising our Series A right now, which help us to mass produce Nimo and ship to all the pre-orders already. We have all the enterprises they already engaged with. So far, everything that we did completely organic. All the traction, everything is organic,
Awesome.
which is super crazy. So we are focusing funding. That's the biggest next milestone to step into mass production.
Yeah, I think that's really cool. Awesome. Well, thank you. Thank you so much, Raul, for joining us today.
Thank you so much
great.
for giving the opportunity.
Yeah, sure. My pleasure. Awesome. Thank you. Cool. Next up, we have Francis Chen joining us. Francis is an independent 3D artist and immersive developer, Augmented Cities LLC, which he'll talk about, focus on AR brand activations and interactive AR games with 4 years in the AR space. He's an official Snap Lens partner, and his Snap AR lenses have reached over 72 million plays on Snapchat and 588,000 shares. His clients have included Snap, Ralph Lauren, Alo Yoga, and HBO. It's good to have you here, Francis.
Hi, thank you so much, Andy. And thank you, Rohil, for your awesome presentation. Let me just set up my screen share quickly. Give me one moment here. All right, see? All right. So I'm going to talk about briefly custom landmarkers. So can you all see this quick here? Awesome. So this is going to be a pretty quick presentation here. Awesome, perfecto, perfect. So Snap AR custom landmarkers. So I'm mostly in more of the content. So think like AR brand activations, art, AR mini games, etc. So I'm more of the art side. So a little bit selection of my work here. You can see down here my client base. So custom landmarkers are basically a way to sort of generate location-based AR experiences by scanning sort of like locations anywhere in the world, basically, and generating a 3D mesh to sort of apply via a 3D artwork, or interactivity inside Snap Lens Studio, which is the game engine that we use. So essentially, the process is very simple. So I'm going to actually do a live demo. Hopefully this will work. So basically, the steps I'll show you is basically, hey, first step is we're going to basically scan the mesh. Second step is that we're going to basically have the actual mesh, the actual color mesh inside the Snap Lens engine, Snap Lens Studio game engine here with all the 3D assets, which I've worked on as well, and pre-animate. And finally, you get to see this AR experience tested on location. So I'm going to switch to 2 screens here. Let me one moment here. So this is sort of what it looks like inside Snap Lens Studio here. It's very so this is a very heavy file size. So as you can kind of see here, this actually hits this 6.5 6 megabyte file size under the 8 megabytes. So it's pretty decently sized. This is kind of what it looks like. Oh my God, this thing is so, let me see if I can move this thing. It's very, okay, here we go. Yeah, it's very heavy. It's very, 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 very heavy. So you can see here, so all these are animated assets, so you kind of can't see it, the actual assets immediately. But basically what you can do is after you sort of scan the mesh, you basically are able to sort of manipulate the asset in real time. So for example, I'm going to select this random flower here, and let me know if you guys want me to zoom in here. So basically what happens is that after you scan the mesh, basically, you can kind of place 3D assets inside the scene here. You can kind of see this flower is kind of moving here. This other asset here, so I'm going to put a coral relief. I'm going to zoom in this here. So this one is going to be moved. Let me zoom in here actually. Shoot, this is a very heavy file size. So just, oops, my bad. Okay, one moment here. Perfect. Okay, so right here. So I'm gonna try to zoom in here. There we go. This one here. Yeah, we'll do this one. So I'm gonna select this coral reef here, which is somewhere around here, and basically, if you select this mesh here, you can kind of, it's very yeah. Here we go. You can kind of see this. You can kind of see right here that coral reef is kind of leaving here. So basically, the benefit of using like something like SnapLens Studio is actually the 3D mesh of the world that you're scanning. You can basically generate that mesh and put it inside your viewport, and you can manipulate this experience inside the viewport, which is really great. And this is a colored mesh, because especially if you're doing like a brand activation for a client, they're really like, oh wow, we want this artwork to be this way. We want this artwork to be that way. We want this type of interaction activity that way, especially if the goal is to sort of drive like brand loyalty, drive people to go to the store as sort of like an AR mini game, whatnot. There's a lot of opportunities to really sort of play around like, okay, how to tell a story as a brand, how to tell a story, add to that experience. So I'm going to demo this in real time. So just give me 1 second here. I'm going to go into my phone here. So basically, I'm going to show you the actual AR experience inside my phone, and then I'm going to show you the scanning part and all that, and you can ask questions as you go along. Give me one moment here. I'm going to get into my share play. Let me do something quickly. Screen share, share play. So I'm going to see if I can go into my share play here. Give me 1 second here. Let me know if you guys can see my screen. Oh, there it is, share play, perfect. And you all, it's loading here. It might be the Wi-Fi here. Can you all see my phone? Okay, let's see what happens here. I'm literally, should be loading here. Well, oh, here it is. Here's a mesh. So this is actually the actual mesh of the living room here, with the scan mesh. So this is good if you're like, hey, I want to reference the location here. Here are the flowers here. Maybe I'll do a selfie. I don't know if you guys are you able to see a selfie of me? You guys can see a selfie of this or no? Or I don't get. Well, anyhow, sorry. All right, and let me just. Oh, whoa! I think I just flipped. Whoa, holy crap! I just flipped the screen here. It looks like it's right here. Anyhow, so here's the scene here. Let me see here. Just want to double check it. Can you guys still hear me? I want to double check.
Yeah.
Okay, just want to double check because I don't know the audio's here. So this is sort of the AR scene here, and actually, let me show you the scanning process so you guys can get an idea of how this works. So I'm gonna show you the AR scan the actual scanning application. Give me one moment here. Okay. Okay. Give me 1 sec. I'm gonna do a share play here. 1 sec. All right. See. So this is how it works here. Y'all can see my. Okay. Y'all can see my. Oops. Oh shoot, my bad. Let me go and snap. Okay. All right. Let me go back to the actual share play experience. Okay, cool. So this is basically in the SnapLens Studio Custom Landmarker Creator. So there are a lot of different settings you can use. Like if you want to scan the mesh, combine a separate, the mesh size, you want to be low resolution, high resolution. If you want to add color or no color, perspectives, et cetera, et cetera. So basically how it works is you scan the environment here, and this is where you kind of pre-scan them. So we're going to scan the entire scene here. Blah, blah, blah. And there's a content thing where you can kind of test out see the object and mesh spawn in the mesh, but it's really dependent on the performance of the experience, or I guess the Wi-Fi connection, because sometimes the fog is spread out. The second thing to do is really you can kind of like scan out these particular like perspectives so that the phone can kind of recognize when you're on site. Okay, this is the couch. This is the parts of the props here. You're basically the goal is to sort of like say, hey, I want to be able to recognize different perspective points. So when Snap's computer vision algorithms like recognize different parts of the mesh, you can see these particular features here. So these are the features that are scanned in real time here. And finally, this is sort of like a testing point where basically you have like the different parts of the mesh here. So you can kind of test and see the features here, right? And whether the flowers are kind of spawning here or not. Well, there's supposed to be actually flowers inside this experience where like they'll spawn to test to see these meshes on their actual dimension, but it's not. And then you can just type in the name of the location. So put down test, right? I'm gonna test, and then it's gonna upload to the server. And basically what you do is you just take this location ID and then you put it inside a SnapRun Studio will generate the mesh. So I'm gonna go back to my screen here. Give you one moment. Should be, oh cool, awesome, perfecto. So yeah, the goal of locate custom landmark is really to say, hey, you know, let's this is sort of a way for artists and creators from the content side to really like sort of showcase like a brand or story or artwork, a sort of way for like, it's like a physical brand activation installation where the goals are really drive traffic, increase brand loyalty, and like help really like sort of amplify the brand story via like the art style or the brand identity, the visual identity of the particular pieces of artwork. And this is very file size heavy, so you can kind of see that it can handle quite a lot. It's still, even though it's kind of laggy here, you know, I generate these flowers. I've actually animated these flowers. This is still under the 8 megabyte file size limit. And if you want to add like bigger stuff, because there's a Snap Cloud, there's a SnapRun Studio Cloud server, we can put up to 25 megabytes of other like assets. You can add much more detail to it. So I'll take any questions, and that's Snap AR custom landmarkers.
Thank you, Francis. That's awesome. Love how it looks. A really nice presentation, and thank you for going into detail on how you created it. That's super, super cool. Really nice. So could this experience be shared on Snapchat?
This is so not this specific experience. The reason why is this is on my living room. So you actually have to go on. This is a good question. You actually have to go on site for these experiences. So actually, I've talked to some folks at the Snap, Lens Studio, the team that works on Snap Maps and Snap Location AR. The biggest pain point right now of these experiences right now from a brand side is that discoverability is a big issue. So in other words, how do you tell people about this experience? Because you either have to go on Snap Maps or brand is promoting this experience via a third-party channel. So for this specific experience, you can't test out. I do have a separate flower experience I have on my Snap Lens Studio account, but not this one because this is specifically my living room. This is private lens. But the big challenge right now, I think, in the AR space is how do you get people to go through this experience unless you have other like marketing partners or their brand is promoting this. And this is sort of lead to a situation like, do you put a QR code in the front of the store? Do you put a QR code in front of the building or statue, sculpture? I think those are, from a brand and retailer side, people are still assessing how to improve discoverability of these AR experiences.
Awesome. Duck Q wants to know, I think relevant to what you were discussing, how does this work out in public?
The way this would work in public, so I want to maybe disclose and say that this is still relatively new right now. So a lot of this technology, I think there's some creative agencies like Ghost Spooky that are sort of like investing it, like they're working with fashion brands to create like physical installations. So the intent of how it would work in public is you would basically have like a QR code, you have like a signage that says, hey, try out this lens here. You would scan the code or you would scan the lens code, possibly in a public space. And then the goal is to sort of like walk around the space and see different sort of interactions, physics. So really, I think the way I would describe it is it's kind of like a AR installation art piece. You can add interactions, you can add like different gameplay mechanics, but the key thing is that the goal is to sort of like make it's sort of an experiential retail like category where the goal is to really have fun. It's kind of like going to like the Nike flagship stores and you see a lot of like interactive gameplay, or like I'm gonna play basketball and there's like a bunch of digital signage and like holograms and like, you know, fun facts about Nike and all the cool gameplay. And that's sort of the idea is you want to make retail kind of fun. And that's sort of where I think brands are now realizing that, oh shoot, we want people to know us more than just the physical product utility. We want to be very aspirational. So the way this is intended to work in from the public side is that we want to make retail more experiential, adding gameplay so that there's a strong sense of brand loyalty. Oh wow, they're more than just a physical product. There's actually gameplay. This is a mini narrative involved. So
Awesome, sweet. A few more questions. First off, Duck, you said that they've seen a designer wearing clothing with a QR code mapped onto their body. Is that relevant to?
That's a good question. You could do that. That's what I call the experiential marketing, where well, you can kind of go to like a fashion event, fashion walk, and then they'll have the QR code. You could actually do that. I have never seen that specific example, but I actually like that a lot, and that could be a way to do discoverability, because I think the best use case for this is for venue-based, like event-based marketing. Basically, if you're like a concert or a fashion house, a lot events where you have a lot of foot traffic, so you could you could have the QR code or snap code inside like a uniform or jacket, and they'll scan it, and then the experience pops up. As long as there's signage, yeah, that says go to this direction. That's the most important part.
Awesome, thank you. A few other questions I want to make sure to hit. Hassan wants to know. So they've never built with Snap AR Lens Creator. What are some of your favorite brand marketing campaigns that you've worked on or explored?
So there's two questions. So you're saying that the first question, since there's not that many location-based AR experiences, what are my favorite AR brand marketing campaigns? Is that correct?
Yeah, and then
Yeah.
maybe sure. And if sure, go ahead. You can answer that one.
Yeah. My favorite one that I've done is actually the Snap House of Dragons location-based AR. I actually have the screen, the slide for that. Let me give it 1 second. Let me see. Can you see this slide? So this is actually the House of Dragons location-based AR experience. This is in Venice Canals in West Side LA, basically. And basically, what I did was I scanned the bridge of the Venice Beach, and then I basically put like marker points, like nodes or spears to say, "Hey, dragon, fly around this way." And I actually like that experience a lot because I think it. I actually have a city planning background. I worked in city planning for about several years, and part of the thing, and I like doing place-based campaigns where you can kind of like encourage the user to walk around the entire environment. So that was actually one of my favorite AR campaigns I've done for HBO House of Dragons. The other AR experience I worked on that I really like is actually using Snap Spectacles. I was commissioned by Snap in 2020, last year actually, where I basically use Snap Spectacles to say, oh, what's the day in the life of a jellyfish? So basically using voice ML and hand tracking right here to learn about what jellyfish eat, where do they live? So spawning the AR experience. So, and the reason why I like that is I think museum-based AR experiences are also going to be popular too, because it's a very specific, there's a very strong specific intent. The younger generations of students are going to learn stuff outside of like traditional textbooks, and it's also like very gameplay oriented, and I think a lot of retailers, in terms of thinking being more relevant to Gen Z, they're going to really think about how do I restructure our positioning as more like a game publisher, games studio. Obviously you'd have to hire a creative agents to do that, but it's more of like I like those type of experiences more, because I think it's very important to really see media, like I think, and any sort of interactive storytelling, younger kids are not going to learn on textbooks anymore. So those are the two experiences I really like. Oh, so I think
thank you, Francis. I have a few more questions. I want to make sure to get a few through them. We have a few more minutes. Laura wants to know, is this in a public platform, free access, like an artist can create content in the city and anyone who gets the QR code can see it?
This is a public. So Snapland Studio is free, so anybody can download it like right away. And I can show you that right now really quickly if I can. So actually, this is inside the SnapLens Studio website here. So literally, a lot of the documentation of, hey, here's the QR code to scan the mesh anywhere you want, and I can leave the links later after this call, after the presentation. Here's the app here. Here's the here's a video scan, et cetera, et cetera. There's actually, let me show you this. There's actually city scale AR. This is actually something that's more relevant, city scale AR. And this is actually Snap basically scan 3 cities. So basically they scan London, downtown Los Angeles, and Santa Monica. So they basically have these districts of downtown LA, Santa Monica. And I know they're working on expanding to other geographies right now. That's one of the updates they're exploring. And basically you can have access to the actual, let me see if I can show the map. You have access to the actual 3D mesh of the inside the viewport of that specific city or neighborhood, and you could add 3D models. Let me see if there's a better image. This might show it here. So so you can add pins of, hey, I want people to go to this location, and hey, I'm going to place 3D objects inside this area. And the viewport of this world, the viewport of this I'm sorry, the view. Let me see if there's the photos right here. Give me 1 second here. I'll let me see if I can quickly find it really quickly. AR SnapLens Studio. I actually have on my Instagram. Actually, let me do that. That's actually faster. So let me do that really quickly. So this is actually from if you know the downtown Los Angeles area,
We just have 2 minutes here, Francis. So
sorry. Okay, never mind. But to answer your question, yes, this is free and accessible to the wider public, and I'm happy to answer more questions in detail afterwards if you want to learn more.
Yeah, share your email, your LinkedIn. Let me just ask you one quickly from David O. If you could answer it briefly. What was the total production time for the AR Flower Landmarks experience? Can you easily port it to game engine?
Sure. Yeah. So this is a personal project because I think custom landmarker project is still really hard to fund right now because I think the brands are still about accessible value proposition. For this particular experience, including asset production, animation, it would be about, and pre-production is research, about 2 to 3 weeks total. And that is a 40-hour. I was doing this outside of my own client stuff, so about at least a 40, at least 2 to 3 weeks, and that includes testing, pre-production, animation, rigging. The placement part is easy. It's actually the asset production, lighting, testing. It's about 2 to 3 weeks.
Awesome. Thank you, Francis. Really great work, and awesome to have you.
Appreciate it. I'll leave my info later. So cool.
Yeah, awesome. And Rohil, if you want to add your email as well. Cool. James Ashley's with us next. Really good to have you, James. James is a mixed reality architect specializing in Magic Leap, HoloLens, Oculus, and Connect. In 2012, he wrote the book Beginning Connect Programming with Jarrett Webb for A-Press. In 2017, he and Dennis created the app development for HoloLens course on LinkedIn Learning. James currently works as an engineering manager for an AR incubator in Redmond, Washington. I'll share these links as well if you want to have a look. Thank you, James, for joining.
Thank you, Andy. Francis, that was an amazing presentation. Thank you. So before Ubiquity, this started off as a blog post, and Andy read it and asked me if I could turn it into a presentation, which I was excited and a little, I felt some trepidation also. But let me talk about before Ubiquity first. The reason I wrote this initially was partly out of a sense of exhaustion. I started off doing AR HMDs back in 2016 with HoloLens, and that's what I've been doing with my career ever since, right? And if you're a part of that, you remember, it was incredibly exciting in the beginning, but then in 2016, AR didn't really take off. And then in 2017, it didn't quite take off. And it sort of goes on and on like that. Now, all of you're showing up for the New York AR meetup, which means you're the true believers. But I got to think even true believers at some point get exhausted, right? You go, man, I just can't keep doing this. And then somebody comes along with Meta 3 and says, what do you think about the Meta 3? And you've sort of had your heart broken so many times that you go, yeah, man, it's cool. Could happen. I don't know. It's good. And that made me think, back to this basic idea. How do we talk about this idea that AR is going to take off at some point, right? Especially AR HMDs. And how do we know when it's about to happen? because that's kind of a really huge deal. For a long time, people set themselves up as the key prognosticators who knew for certain, yeah, Magic Leap was, the AR killer that's going to change everything. And then history just keeps going on at the same pace. So I pulled back at one point, just asked myself, what is the inflection point? Because that's what we usually talk about. At some point, there's an inflection point, and suddenly everybody's got AR the way that they've got smartphones today. I think all of you, if you've ever done a pitch, you've got that slide in your pitch deck that shows a picture of the smartphone, shows that curve going up, and you get, it's the inflection point, man. It's just going to happen. Okay. So talking about the inflection point, back in 2016 when the HoloLens came out, it was so huge. I remember I got a preview in 2015, I think, and it was just magnificent. And up to then, I'd been doing Connect development, which was related. And so everybody was talking about the inevitability of it all, because there was this beautiful pitch. We know that the smartphone came along, created a new device sector altogether, changed the market, created a need that we didn't even know we had before the smartphone came along. And so the argument was, well, there's this problem with smartphones. One is you're always looking down, right? So it's kind of antisocial. And the other one is your hands are always busy. So this is something that can't be used every day, it can't be used in the office and so on. People manage to, but it seemed like a slam dunk. Oh yeah, AR headsets are going to do everything that smartphones do, but better. That's a great argument. And then 2017 came along. We were saying HoloLens is the next evolutionary step in smartphones. It's inevitable. 2018, Magic Leap is the next evolutionary step in smartphones. It's inevitable. And then we get to HoloLens 2, we get to the Magic Leap 2. There's lots of ups and downs. And then, of course, that freak out moment at the beginning of the year when Microsoft decides to start laying off a lot of their HoloLens engineers, and you're going, we thought you guys were the true believers. What's going on? This really messes us up. And I think always the problem is we're the developers, right? We have a certain amount of control, but at a certain point, we're helpless. We're dependent on hardware vendors coming along, building ecosystems, investing money in marketing, and building a device that will actually work out in the consumer market. On the flip side, the problem for all these hardware vendors is they're looking at developers and going, all we can do is build the baseball stadium, right? Somebody's got to build the killer app that makes people come along. So I think all of us are in this situation where we're dependent on each other, but at the same time kind of helpless. And that creates a state of exhaustion. Anyway, so around 2019, 2022, we suddenly realized, okay, we can't keep talking about horse races or start betting on which device is better, because, they're all pretty much the same. It's all waveguides. So why don't we stop talking about dates and hang on to the idea that it's inevitable, right? Whenever it happens, it's inevitable, because that smartphone argument is just a slam dunk and we all really believe in it. So that's when we start talking about this inflection point, and it's an inflection point to AR ubiquity, because then we can just say, we know it's going to happen, but I don't know if it's going to happen this year or in 3 years or in 5 years or 20 years. But when it happens, it will be inevitable. And I think we've all sort of settled that as a way of framing our thinking around it. So I wanted to go back to basics and just try to figure out where did we come up with this term, the inflection point. And here's an analogy. So I would say that partly it's marketing, partly it's us self-marketing, and somewhere in there, there's a grain of truth. And there's a similar situation with the term mixed reality, which kept fluctuating in meaning. And at a certain point, it became XR. And do you remember there was always those different spellings in XR, and there would be Reddit fights over what's the correct way to spell it? And it always seemed to me, or I knew why I started putting XR in my LinkedIn profile and on my resume and stuff. It's because I hate having to explain, oh, I do AR, but I can do VR too. And for other people, I do VR, but I can do AR too. Or for people saying, well, yeah, I do phone AR, but that doesn't mean I can't do Magic Leap development. It's, very similar. So I think at a certain point, everybody started saying XR just because it made it a lot easier to market ourselves as developers, especially when the development marketing and all of AR kept going up and down over time. And so the inflection point is sort of a similar thing, right? it lets us hang on to this little piece of rhetoric about AR inevitability and keeps us going, gives us a little energy when we go in and talk to audiences and investors and whatever. We believe in it. You wouldn't still be here if you didn't believe in it in some way. And so it becomes this last vestige of what we're going through in 2016, I think. Okay, so obviously I'm getting to the point where I'm saying, it seems like I'm saying AR ubiquity and the inflection point are sort of myths, right? I don't think that's completely true. So what I want to hang on to is this idea that, well, yeah, we know it's sort of marketing, but instead of just saying, therefore, let's stop talking about it, I want to hang on to it just for a moment. And this is a phrase that Slavoj Žižek comes up with and pulls out of Hegel, this idea of tarrying with the negative. Sometimes we don't need to move on. Sometimes it's okay just to hang on to a certain moment, this moment where we've got a term that we don't know if it's true or not. And I would say, let's act as if it's true, right? The inflection point is a real thing. AR ubiquity is a real thing. We'll get back to that point. And then let's just dig deep into the idea, well, if these things are true, then the next thing I would naturally want to do is figure out what are the signs that the inflection point is about to hit, right? And I think the way to do that is you sort of look at the history of all these revolutionary changes. And one thing about the inflection point is it didn't come out of the blue. It's actually based on a lot of concepts that have been around for ages in religion and philosophy and other places. And whenever people want to talk about radical changes or paradigm changes, they always come up with these same samples all the time. So we know Kurzweil talks about the singularity, when suddenly AI will be smart enough that it can teach itself. And that becomes one of these magic moments where the whole world changes. Or the Copernican revolution, we talk about in that way too. We used to think that the sun revolved around us, and then we realized that we revolve around the sun. In theology, we have it in the notion of the second coming of Christ, which is a fairly big deal. But again, it's this idea that all of history suddenly ends and we go into a different phase. There's Marxism, which has religious elements to it, where we turn into historical science and talk about the proletarian revolution as being this inevitable thing. We just don't know when it's going to happen, but it's going to happen. And of course, the granddaddy of them all, when we talk about technological change, is this notion that, the printing press changed the way our nervous systems are built and people don't realize it. And, that goes back to, well, printing press, smartphone, AR headsets. It's just a continuum. But then I just wanted to dig a little bit deeper into that also. And if you'll bear with me, I think it's worth it. So historically, there are three models of disruptive change that we can see. So one is the notion of an apocalyptic event that you only notice once it's already happened, right? One day you're doing one thing and then suddenly you're in a different world. And the great example of this would be zombie apocalypse, right? Nobody ever sees the zombie apocalypse coming. Suddenly people wake up in the hospital or whatever, and it's just around you and you're in a new world. And there's actually more positive versions of that too, which we'll go into. The second one, and this is what waiting for AR to happen sometimes feels like, is when you have an event that you've prophesied, or you've done the science and it's just logical, but for some reason it never really happens, right? And you're left waiting and waiting and waiting. And then the final thing is there are events with two beats to them. And I'll go into that in a little bit. Okay, so with apocalyptic history, the great example again is zombie apocalypse, because we get to watch it on TV all the time. But in theology, the great example is in the final book of the Bible, which is the notion of the rapture, that at some point, 144,000 elect are just going to be sucked up into heaven. And so that in turn gives us this whole set of movies and books that are incredibly popular among evangelicals called Left Behind, where suddenly everybody wakes up in the world and a bunch of people are just missing, right? All the good people are gone. And then it's the rest of us left behind to try to figure out what's going on. And the great thing about all these narratives is they never really start before the event, right? All the important stuff happens after the event. And then in philosophy, the great example is The Structure of Scientific Revolutions by Thomas Kuhn, who came up with the phrase paradigm shift. And that's one of the great examples of apocalyptic history, where things just sort of change overnight. I think for a long time we were hoping that AR would be like that, but it doesn't look like it is. So there's another way of looking at history or certain historic events, and it's somewhat theological also, which is the history of waiting. And the great example of this is a movement called millennialism or Achilleanism. It's in Christianity, but it's also in Judaism, and it's in other world religions too. And it's the notion that, man, after 1,000 years, it'll just be over, right? We can stop working so hard because history will come to an end and a great religious figure will come down and change everything for us. And the problem with millennialism, it happened in America in the 1800s, happened in the Middle Ages also, is these dates come along and everybody's expecting it. They sell all their homes, they sell all their goods in order to be virtuous people. And then it never actually happens. And I mean, it's much worse than a bummer, right? You've bet everything on this fantastic event and it just doesn't happen. And there's a similar version of it with cargo cults, which is something in the 50s, I think, in the Fiji Islands, but also other places. And that's a situation where people on these islands would watch, say, the military come along, sit down in a small airstrip, and planes would just regularly come in and drop off goods, and then these goods would be distributed among the people on the island. So once a war is over, everybody leaves, and people form this notion that all they have to do is replicate that airstrip, and they do fake it out with bamboo and stuff, in the hopes that these planes will come back and bring the goods, and it never does. And it's, again, one of those crazy disappointments, right? We know about the tulip bulb economy, where everybody in the world used to buy tulip bulbs as an investment strategy. And you got to think everybody had to know that was a bubble that was going to burst, right? But somehow when you're in the middle of it, you just think, it's just so good, it's going to happen. And everybody around you believes it too. And even more recently, we had that with crypto. I still have my crypto. I'm still waiting for it to turn around, to be honest. But NFTs, I have contempt for NFTs. Who would ever do that? And you probably know this book recently, Going Infinite, this notion that if you're in crypto or are a big investor in real estate or other things, that somehow, profits will just keep going up forever. And somehow we've broken the cycle of economies, these ups and downs that historically we've always seen. And people believe it when everything is going up until they don't believe it anymore. And so that would be the history of waiting. Okay, so here's the third way of looking at history, and it's a fairly weird one, because in the Christian system, you have Christ coming along, changing the world, the Son of God coming into the world, incarnate, but he's not the first one. Before him is St. John the Baptist, the forerunner, who has to be there in order to prepare the way for Christ to come along. It's a fairly strange historical construct, right? And the other weird example of that, there are quite a few of them where you have the major figure, but a minor figure who comes before him. But the other one from modern culture is the Silver Surfer, who is the herald of Galactus. Galactus changes the world, basically comes to eat the earth. But for some reason, he always has a Silver Surfer along with them to sort of prepare the way and warn people beforehand, hey, here's this big thing that's happening. And I mean, what I'm trying to say is there are just these ways that people interpret history that make sense. They're sort of built into our brains. They're sort of cultural things, or maybe we're just hardwired to believe it. But in history, when we try to organize history in order to interpret the future, here's 3 historical ways that we've always done it. So getting back to my promise to get beyond exhaustion, then the question is, what fits the current moment, right? Because this is actually a really great year for AR, and it's worth taking seriously and wondering, are we in the middle of an apocalyptic history where suddenly overnight we'll just be an AR ubiquity world? Or is it a history of waiting? This is what we're scared of, right? That's going to be the same way it was since 2016, where we'll just keep waiting and waiting and waiting, and it never quite takes off. And we keep saying, in 3 years, it's totally going to happen. And then finally, there's a notion that there's a history's herald thing, that we're going to have devices that themselves don't immediately become the ubiquitous device, but they will let everybody know that we finally arrived there where we've got consumer devices that work the way we want AR to work. Okay. And the current moment is basically we're in 2023. We've watched Microsoft drop out of the game completely. But at the same time, Meta is doubling their game, right? They're giving up their old financial model, deep diving into VR and AR, and bringing it at a really low price. So the question is that the thing? Is price the thing that makes us suddenly take AR seriously? Or there's the other device, the Apple Vision Pro, which very few of us have gotten a chance to try, but the people who do tell us it's magical, right? That this is the breakthrough device. And I would say, I don't know. There are a few things that make you wonder. So with Meta Quest 3, we know the problem is Meta's already got a saturated market with the Meta Quest 2. How are they going to get people to buy a Meta Quest 3, which is, I mean, it's better, but is it better enough that people want to spend $500 to $650 for that? I would say that's the main problem for Meta Quest 3. And then the Apple Vision Pro, what we keep being told is, well, it's actually two things. One is the price. And there's some people who believe that price has never been a problem for Apple products. And the people who think, well, $3,500 is, even if you believe that, that's kind of a lot of money. And then the other tricky thing for the Apple Vision Pro is how many devices are they actually going to get out that first year? And people who study these things have been saying maybe it's 600,000 in 2024, which doesn't seem like a ubiquitous AR moment, right? But on the other hand, maybe it's a thing where the experience is good enough that it triggers, let's say, Microsoft to get back in the game because they realize we weren't going to do it, but maybe somebody else is going to set this up for us, right? And so we still want to be a player. And we've got lots of other hardware developers in Taiwan who I think are very interested in this also. Anyways, and that's kind of where I want to leave you all with, just the question, how do we interpret the current moment?
Wow, that was amazing. Thank you, James. Really great.
Thank
you. Let's see here. David Rose wants to know what are your thoughts on the pin? Maybe the humane pin, the AI enabled pin.
I'm not familiar with it. I'm sorry.
No problem. So I'll move on. But David sent the link in the chat. Barry Seth has a question. Rob Vanden Heuvel, dubious theological scholarship aside, he said he's quite enjoying this novel approach to the topic of AR ubiquity. Francis, question, sorry. France wants to know, what are your thoughts on the content investment landscape for AR and gaming?
Okay, so I'll do some setting. I remember when the HoloLens started off, you saw all the examples were in gaming, right? And yet they made this sort of switch to enterprise market and said, here's the problem. There's not enough money out there to make this a gaming device, so we have to sell to the enterprise. When Magic Leap started off, actually all their initial apps were amazing games, I thought, and amazing experiences, and not enterprise. But over time, over the next 3 years, they sort of kept building up this notion that they're going to be enterprise devices also. So I think that's always going to be sort of the central crux. Hardware vendors are looking for a killer app, and right now, I don't think the killer app is going to be gaming. It kind of has to be productivity or enterprise or something like that. But once that catches hold, that will give us an anchor for the devices, and then games can start flourishing on these devices. That's how I see it.
Awesome, thank you. Barry has a question. He raised his hand. If you want to unmute Barry. Let's see. Let me see if he's all right, cool. Well,
Did you hear me now? Yeah.
Yeah.
And thanks so much, James. I never thought we'd hear Jesus in New York AR, but really awesome. That's very surprising, really cool stuff. So I'm wondering, where does AI fit? Is AI maybe what's heralding this? Because maybe that allows for more content generation, more automated and stuff like that. How do you feel that AI fits in the whole puzzle?
Yeah, that's kind of the Holy Ghost in the machine at this point. This notion that that's the extra energy, right? AI combined with AR is going to be this magical event, and it totally could be. I like the sort of notion that AR is the perfect UI for AI. It's compelling, but I think at some level, we still have to reach the point where the device on its own has to be good enough that we can say this is an AR experience I actually want to put on day after day for a couple of hours. And if we can't get to that point, then even with AI, we're not really there yet.
Awesome. What are your thoughts on pass through versus like real clear augmented reality?
Yeah. So yeah, I've got a friend who hits me up on that all the time. I think it depends on the quality of the pass through. Well, here's the problem with waveguides and just seeing clearly, right? We know there's a physical limitation to the field of view, and the field of view is always going to be an annoyance. So I don't think waveguides can get much better than where they are now with the HoloLens 2 and the Magic Leap 2. So I think we have to move to pass through. It's sort of like the next logical steps that we get the wider field of view and a better experience and can start working on those killer apps and just essential apps again. And I'm sure there'll be a scientific breakthrough in the future where we go on to whatever's next. But it really seems to me that waveguides have to pass the baton to pass through at this point, and we just need somebody to create really amazing pass through.
Awesome. Do you think it's an issue that the Meta Quest is running on Android?
No, not for me. Because I mean, for me, the OS doesn't matter so much. The really tricky part is the chips, right? Mm-hmm. And at this point, that's why the Apple Vision Pro just seems really amazing, because they control the manufacture of their own chips and have made sure that they're top notch for these devices.
Awesome. Thank you. Roy Rosen wants to know, do you see HoloLens in the future of AR?
Yeah, I mean, that's a history of Microsoft, right? They're always innovators, then they get out of the market, and then they try to jump back into the market, and I expect them to do it again.
Awesome. What are your thoughts on augmented reality changing or being able to accurately represent reality? Like level of content versus like an element in the real world. How can one cognitively how will one cognitively understand augmented reality like versus the real world, if that makes sense?
Right, that at a certain point will confuse the two, or I imagine that will happen. Cool. I'm a big believer in the idea that, you know, all the anxiety that my teenage daughters felt over the years really comes from me giving them smartphones way too early, and that's affected everybody. I think, you know, there's a certain amount of human nature, but also a certain amount of plasticity to our culture that technology can affect deeply. And yeah, AR clearly is going to have a huge effect if it catches on.
Cool. Paolo wants to know, should more development be spent on AR for mobile to get more engagement, or should there be a push for AR device adoption?
I think AR device adoption, because the question is how AR mobile, it seems to me, there's always going to be that friction of having to hold things up. And it may be a lack of imagination on my part, but I don't really see the new sort of things that we'll be able to innovate with AR and mobile at this point. Whereas AR and headsets, I can just see lots of amazing innovations with AI and so on. And really addressing the previous question, yeah, if we've got AR headsets on for large parts of the day, it's going to really change the way that we interact with the world.
Also, a few more questions. I want to make sure that I hit them. David O, what are your predictions for the future of Magic Leap? And I want to add to that, also interested in your thoughts on Snap and their glasses. So yeah.
Okay. So with the Magic Leap, I don't know. I know they've always been really good at attracting incredibly talented people, but they've just had a lot of turnover. I like the fact that they're out there, that they were always sort of a ballast against Microsoft. and I wish them the best, absolutely. But I don't really understand what's happening at their with their CEO turnover at this point. Okay, Snap. I'd love Snap mostly because they perfected the idea of what a developer IDE should look like, right? That thing is amazing. You can come in with no knowledge and have an app out on their marketplace in about 30 minutes. I mean, to the point that you'll press a button, suddenly you publish an app and you don't realize that you just published an app. And I think that's pretty amazing.
Is it an issue that you're locked into their ecosystem once you create their app?
I don't think so. I mean, we're still at the point. It's like this big promise out there, cross-platform development, right? And we're just not there yet. At this point, what you want to do is always go native in order to build the best app you can, and that means you really need to work hard and learn all these different platforms. And I think that's the way it is. And if you do it well, you'll be able to create really amazing things.
Awesome. All right, we have some big questions here. Whoa. Danny is disappointed that Apple Vision Pro seemed to be a spatial laptop at launch. Any comments on that? HoloLens seems so much more.
I guess I don't really see that. For me, the Apple Vision Pro looks like a kind of a miracle device. And maybe I drink too much Kool-Aid and I've listened to too many interviews, but yeah, I don't see that as a problem. And the other thing is, part of it is Apple's reputation, right? They do UX well. They've always done UX well. And at least at that level, there may be other problems, but I don't see them messing up on the UX experience.
Awesome. Cool. Greg wants to know, in the early days of cars, there were cars steered by tillers, by wheels operating in reverse with different arrangement of pedals, including a throttle that started full on. Cars had to rationalize or we'd still be in chaos. Won't this have to happen with AR, a convergence of technology and interfaces?
I mean, I would hope so at some point, that we would have more cross-platform, but it's going to take time. And, you know, the web browser wars are how long now? 25 years old, and we still have multiple browsers, right?
True. Cool. What about web AR? Speaking of browsers.
Yeah, I like the concept of web AR, but it for me, it's like looking at conceptual art. I get it, but at the same time, I just don't think the quality of web AR is as good as programming, say, native in Unity for the HoloLens and the Magic Leap, or doing your Android development for Oculus, or whatever the new Apple system is.
Would you say Unity is the most ubiquitous software platform right now?
For AR
AR.
HMD development? Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Cool. Let's see. Rob wants to know, he's saying, I agree that AR's killer app will likely be a business app. Pokemon Go was a huge hit, but it didn't sell devices. However, the tipping point to consumer adoption may come from a critical mass of not killer apps. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would bet on that too. It seems like betting on killer app is really asking for a lot. And so we know that the original killer app is the spreadsheet app for the PC, and set off the PC market because it just made financial sense, right? You don't have to, it basically paid for itself plus some. But I don't know what the killer app for the smartphone was really, or let's say the iPhone. Was it the App Store, or was it Angry Birds, or Plants vs. Zombies? Yeah. So in that case, it seems more like something that allows us to have several almost killer apps. Cool. Is the right thing.
Awesome.
Fruit Ninja. Yep.
Yeah. Unity, is it AR Core and Kit or other plugins? Yeah. And then if you have any thoughts on Unity there, I guess.
Thoughts on Unity as a cross-platform type of thing. I think that, so one of the tricks with Unity is it makes it really good. You're able to go into your boss and say, we want to develop in Unity. And he goes, why? That's kind of expensive. And you go, well, because we can, develop our app on that for this platform. But then if the momentum changes to another platform, we can just switch over, right? And that's a really good story. And the problem is that only works if you plan it out really well ahead of time and you pick the right infrastructure and architecture and so on.
Do you think ubiquity is going to be tied to a native platform or something that's more ubiquitous across multiple?
I think it's going to start off with a native platform.
Okay.
And again, it's like, if you remember the early days of iPhone development, I mean, horrible developer tools, horrible developer experience, but the payoff was so good and the excitement was so good that people didn't mind torturing themselves. And so the argument for Unity is always that it's so easy, right? Why make yourself work when, you know, you just get all of these features for free? And I tend to think we're closer to the original iPhone 2 development world than we are to anything else, which means the important thing is building absolutely fabulous apps and learning to develop an eye for fabulous AR apps. And it's going to be on native.
Awesome. Thank you so much, James. We're out of time, but feel free to put your email in and whatnot so folks can reach out to you.
Okay.
Really appreciate it. It was a great presentation. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you.
Awesome. So this is a great segue to David O's presentation, who's here with us. David has a proven track record of scaling developer software platforms and influencing product and go-to-market strategies. And he has experience on AAA game development, AR, VR tech, and AI. He's built developer ecosystems for some of the most acclaimed tech companies in the world, and it's really exciting to have you here, David. Always been a fan of the projects you've worked on. So thank you for joining.
Thanks so much, Andy. And wow, what a great presentation by James. How can you follow up that killer quote, the Holy Ghost in the machine? And Andy, you always bring the heat when it comes to content. And Francis and Rohildev, that was great stuff. So my presentation, I put together something that I wanted to share with this audience that's very, I guess, experts in the space, right? And I have a thesis regarding AR will eat the world, but only with AI, because AR is actually the interface itself for AI. And a little bit about myself. I used to make games for Ubisoft. I worked at Leap Motion. Leap Motion was hand tracking software for VR. And I worked very closely with David Holtz, the founder of the company, who also created Midjourney. I then worked at Meta Augmented Reality. We had the widest field of view. We also had hand tracking. The name was actually acquired by Facebook. I also worked hand in hand at Samsung at focusing on the developer ecosystem around AI. And then back to Meta. My first gig when I was at Facebook was, hey, what do you think about changing the name of Oculus Connect to Facebook Connect? And I said, let me go ask some people if that's a great idea. But anyways, long story short, developers actually felt the name Facebook was actually toxic, and even more so for the XR community. I then worked at Dapper Labs. We coined the term NFT. After that, I've been just working on a lot of cool projects. I've been focusing on the VR report, which is just me spending time with my friends talking about XR. And I advise for XR Bootcamp, one of the biggest communities in XR development. So I know you guys all seen Runway. Runway 2 was launched just actually in March, right? So believe it or not, like we're at this stage now with Gen AI and being able to then produce quality content like this. But this released in March, everyone. Is that crazy? Like I have a thesis. Working at one of the biggest social media companies in the world, I feel that we'll be able to experience all of our most ideal moments, the most sacred moments in our lives that we shared with everyone within our friends and family network. And we'll be able to relive those moments with Gen AI. And I don't think that's very far, considering that, Ray Kurzweil, who, created the OCR, created the first scanner, his whole thesis was like, he'll be able to actually be reunited with his father with computers. And I didn't really understand that until this advent of Gen AI. And wow, how crazy of a world has this become, right? But as a lot of AR has been around for quite some time. Myron Kruger, he created Video Place, which was actually one of the first augmented reality experiences. Boeing's been doing AR since the 1990s for assistance for wiring different equipment. And of course, AI's role now in AR is really the contextual understanding of the environment. And I think that's what my thesis is today. Cool. So, I used to work hand in hand on the revamp of Bixby at Samsung. I worked hand in hand with Adam Shire, who created Siri. And we always had this goal of what LLMs will kind of do for natural language processing and how it would affect AI. But Bixby was different. Basically, it was a way for AI agents to speak with other AI agents to fulfill tasks. But we always hypothesized, like in the future, especially with like hardware, like Samsung products, for example, they all have cameras, and understanding, how people's emotions were. And if they went to the fridge, because Bixby was available in Samsung fridges, we would then understand like people's emotional behavior, to understand with sensor data, maybe with their Samsung wristwatch, to understand if they're tired. But it was really a way for to have real world understanding through even like a contextual information, like even with your devices that you love, and then predicting what the user may need in real time. And based on that AI, now imagine that lens through AR and being able to really understand and see that interaction. And of course, AR's mainstream, is moving fast. I mean, Francis kind of went along and talking, giving us an overview of how easy it is to build experience with Snap. But there 63% of the daily active users use AR filters on Snapchat. So that's more than 150 million people using AR filters today, right? And then as we know, with TikTok, there's 32 million daily active users using TikTok, facial recognitions to create all those beautifying or oldifying photos. And there's 5 million DAUs of Pokemon Go. Now, everyone knows this, but my hypothesis is this: through the phone and through screen, we're not getting that full AR experience as when it is going to be available on the face. And it's coming really soon. And we see this now. I just realized I didn't skip to the slide. We see this now with the human AI synergy, right? Mark, he announced at Connect, the AI assistant through audio, with the Ray-Bans. And with that assistant, we don't have the technology yet to have the optics, but we're getting there with the assistant, right? And I think once we have the optics and the bandwidth available, that's when things get very interesting. And, a lot of tech companies and carrier companies such as T-Mobile, they're also providing wireless technology services for students in the classroom that can't get broadband. They're launching satellites in space. So a lot of this stuff is coming into fruition. And, of course, with, understanding gesture control, with hand tracking, that's very important. But now, we really announced body tracking as well. And of course, through mixed reality, mixed reality is really just the gateway to full AR experiences, because now developers can cheaply prototype on large field of view headsets to be able to experience AR applications. And why is this important, right? Well, I'm sorry to say it's still future tech, right? Because we're talking about Gen Z. This is the first digital native generation. They grew up on software and hardware, and basically their alignment to understanding how natural to use technology, it's really going to be their technology that are going to be influencing the workplace, their play, their leisure, all that good stuff. The gaming frontier, we touched a little bit about this, but I think the APAC region, in terms of the growth for gaming in Asia, by 2026, gamers will be over 1 billion gamers. So think about that. Gamers in Asia are a little bit more adopted to new technologies. They're the first ones to jump into blockchain in gaming, when it's kind of a bad 4-letter word for Web3 in Western cultures. And global generative AI gaming is poised to grow to 922 million in 2022. and to over 7 billion by 2032. And it's not just creating content, but it's actually expediting the process of production and development, right? And that's going to be really interesting because there's already tools that are coming out. I'm really big into InWorld. InWorld is an AI system where you can actually just be able to create an NPC through AI and just giving it different attributes. And it's almost what you see is what you get. You give different personalities through different sliders. I want this person to be more aggressive. I want this person to be more kind. And the AI is it just works, right? And of course, through different headsets, I really love Rohil's presentation, but I don't know anyone who doesn't have a Steam Deck that doesn't have a Ray Neo pair of glasses to be able to play those 2D experiences that you love on console in headset or on PC in headset. So AR computing in the future. Of course, we've talked about Apple Vision Pro, but today's news about Mark Zuckerberg losing 46 billion in losses around the metaverse, that is equivalent to Best Buy, right? To Fortune 100 companies. So it shows you the investment that these tech companies are doing. Apple, of course, these big tech companies, Apple, Samsung, Google, they already have their R&D efforts. We don't know exactly how many billions they spend, but I wouldn't be surprised that it is something similar to what people have publicized about Meta. But basically, we're going to be coming into this next phase of AR's dominance just through mixed reality, right? Because people will get headsets. There's already over 20 million Quest headsets on the market. And we're going to get hardware efficiency, safety, and more content validation through AI. And we're also going to be shifting from traditional screens to traditional AR interfaces because XR glasses and headsets are going to be more prevalent. So I kind of hinted on this. Mixed reality is kind of the gateway to AR. There's several things that I think are going to be very important. People are going to be doing hobby training, things that you love. Like this is Paradiddle. Paradiddle lets you track your real drum set, and you're able to then be able to learn how to play the drums with the pair of glasses. I worked on Rocksmith at Ubisoft, which allowed you to train the guitar, but it was very challenging to play the real guitar and look at a screen at the same time. But being able to see it through your heads-up display, that's going to be a game changer. This developer created Coaster Mania. I think this was a great use case of mesh. Being able to map your room and build your own roller coaster. This just kind of opens up a whole different genre of using the mesh data in your own room, something that Francis has shown off as well, and being able to interact with it. It's going to be a game changer with anything from simulations, learning how to cook, learning how to do mixed martial arts, all those things around real life benefit is going to start showing in mixed reality, which again will be a game changer once AR becomes more prevalent. So the conclusion here is that, the AI will be the predominant driver for AR, having a different problem to solve. And of course, this is just a huge blue ocean opportunity for developers that are interested into the AR and AI space. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you. That was really cool. Thank you, David. What are your thoughts on search discoverability for mobile AR gaming in the APAC region, given that population density and walkability are much higher compared to the US?
That's
Francis.
great. Yeah, that's a great question. I think discoverability is a problem across the board, but I think that this is happening, especially around the development community around XR. And we see taking note of how to build communities around niche technologies like NFTs or blockchain. It's really these small niche communities forming themselves, and these developers having these one-to-many relationships with their own community to be able to grow that through discovery. So I don't think there's going to be one marketplace that rules them all, right? Because all their platforms will do that, but try to even get attention on Snapchat, right? Francis, you would know more. It's very challenging. And that's the same across the board for all developers at ecosystems like Meta or even game company studios. So I think this whole trend of these micro communities are going to start taking off, where, people who are really into your niche type of product will start saying how cool it is and then growing it that way.
Awesome. Thank you. Have you seen Piano Vision? Rob Vanden Heuvel asked.
Yeah, Rob, Piano Vision, that was the marquee presentation. Hey, that was also made by one developer, like him and his mom was like, hey, I want to learn the piano, but I kind of don't want to do it in public, right? That kind of motivation by one developer and being able to learn how to play the guitar through the mixed reality capabilities of the Quest 3 is phenomenal. Again, I think that was probably the genesis of why this whole hobby training ideology, I think, is going to start taking off.
What are your thoughts on pass-through mixed reality versus augmented reality?
Well,
like the HoloLens.
I think that's really the gist, is because with HoloLens, it's such a barrier to entry because the cost, right? You're talking over $3,000 versus 10x reduced of $300 headset to have pass-through. I'm sorry, like $400 for a pass-through headset. It's first going to be the developers. Like everything else, developers are there first to innovate, right? They're going to be exploiting that mixed reality capabilities where people are going to start wanting these full augmented reality experiences. And also another friction point with the HoloLens, which I love that device. I think they really nailed it for the enterprise use case. There's no cords to get stuck on construction sites, is that the field of view, right? I think what most people, when they imagine full augmented reality, and that's why people aren't playing AR games outside of Pokemon or Monster Hunter, and those both games don't use the full aspects of AR, right? Doing AR through a 2D screen is still a window. And I think that wide field of view of the Quest 3, that's where developers can exploit it to actually have more immersion. Now, for enterprise, I think that use case of being productive and using it for work, the field of view doesn't have to be there, right? But for entertainment purposes, it kind of does.
Awesome. What are some of the difficulties in creating for developers to be creating killer apps for augmented reality? And is there still a hurdle on getting developers to be developing for these platforms? Or have people started developing for mixed reality?
Well,
It's a more
I
question.
just know the ecosystems that I'm aware of, like with XR Bootcamp, we teach some courses on Apple Vision Pro. We have some speculation early on there, as well as the Meta Quest 3 with the pass-through features that the headset provides. Augmented reality, and we also do things around HoloLens, but I think it's still really early, but the pass-through features on Quest 3, because it's going to be so accessible, you're going to be able to reach a larger audience as quickly as possible, and then recoup some of your investment to be able to grow.
Cool. Greg has a comment that he'd like to follow on earlier. If you'd like to speak on it, you could, if you want to read it, I'll just read it out loud as well. It seems likely to me that much AR usage will become life critical in ways we can partly foresee, but maybe not yet for all cases. Once this is the case, then uniformity of use will become absolutely essential, because our ability to use the equipment quickly and instinctively will make the difference between living and dying. This was quickly seen as true for cars, but not for browsers. So, do you have any thoughts on that?
Let me see if I understand the question right. I think the question is basically like, hey, when is AR going to be more essential? And as essential as cars versus browsers, right? I think when it just becomes more ubiquitous, where you actually see value in your real life, right? Like one of the theses that when I worked at the original Meta was that we wanted to just add more context to the world with a wider field of view. And why was that important? Well, if you wanted to learn about your real world environment, whether it's learning to know what type of flower this is on your run, or to understand how to fix, this electrical panel at home, which you have no experience knowing how to do, and to be able to have that instructed in a way or presented that information in a way that's accessible, that's easy to understand, that's completely there's no occlusion to not understand the information that's being presented. Once that becomes more intrinsic in our lives, then yeah, we're not going to see that value proposition. But I think, again, back to my thesis, I think once AI becomes a lot more prevalent in our lives and being able to be able to see that optically, again, Runway Gen AI just came out this past June, publicly available, right? Like we're just at the precipice. I always tell my friends, like, there's life before Gen AI and life after Gen AI. And I think once, we all use ChatGPT probably on a regular basis. I'm talking to a tech audience here. But now imagine being able to see that through a lens and being able to have that assistant show you, and not only so you can read it, but then show you visually on what to do. I think that's when it becomes a lot more critical in everyday's life.
Awesome. Thank you. A few more questions here. Roy, which you probably see, what do you believe to be the most computational challenge of geolocation AR, which also ties to Francis's talk as well?
Yeah, I think we all know cloud is super expensive, right? And that's probably the biggest friction point. Who's paying for this stuff? And then is there enough business to support it? That's the foundational piece.
Awesome. And that connects to Miro's comment on any thoughts on cloud rendering and streaming for XR application development and scale?
Yeah, there's actually a couple of companies that are doing this, like cloud compute on demand. It just escapes me here, but there's a couple of companies that are really getting a lot of notoriety. And Miro, I can follow up with you. The co-founder of Upload VR, Will Mason, is working on that, and I can follow up on that one.
If you want to put your email or your LinkedIn, David, so folks can connect with you after, that'd be great. Are there any features that you feel would that could be implemented into a headset that could make the experience more powerful, like haptics or eye tracking?
Yeah, I mean, I think Apple is kind of leading the charge. Like, one thing that is kind of interesting to note, and probably you guys do know this or not, but Vario's, tens of thousands of dollar headset. It's a VR headset. It's got the best eye tracking. It's got the widest field of view. It's got the highest resolution. And the use case for that obviously was for like high-end military solutions around aviation pilot training. But what I learned was, Apple was actually one of the biggest customers of that headset. So you can already see Apple's direction is like, no, we want to go the highest end possible. And Lucky Palmer, the founder of Oculus, even stated that, like, his time at Facebook, he really wanted to give a VR product that people would really lust after by having all the best features around all the best inputs with gesture, eye tracking, hand tracking, etc. But he just wasn't able to do that at Meta. And that's his words and not mine. And yeah, the Varo XR3 is phenomenal. But, seeing that and understanding that, the direction that Apple's going, they're going for a specific user that's going to be really appreciating the technology by just blowing people away with the features that they're offering.
That's awesome. Thank you. Rob says, with Gen AI able to absorb large context, including lore and video, we're remarkably close to Skyrim VR with dynamically generated quests, including characters and locations. Add a player feedback voting system for curation, and you have the killer app here for AR.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah. Let's see. So Francis, right now most AR projects that are getting funded are mostly face filters and limited AR place-based activations. What are your thoughts on that based on your experience, David?
Yeah, I mean, the first step was like, hey, let's capitalize on the camera and using 2D interactions to, basically be able to post and, gain as much, social cred, because you didn't need that spatial understanding through a 2D window, right? I mean, that's why a lot of people here, if you play Pokemon Go, a lot of you may not play the AR features because it's not truly AR and understanding spatial recognition. But again, I just also think that we just didn't have the technology. Like Qualcomm's XR2 chipset, kind of allows for a real mobile and fast, super incredible, super, powers of being able to have outdoor or indoor XR with really high processing. I mean, we just didn't have the technology yet either.
Is there room for smaller companies? Awesome. So you post your link. Is there room for smaller companies to succeed, like Tilt 5 or some of the other smaller AR hardware companies?
Yeah, Tilt 5 is awesome. If some of you don't know, it's basically a board game, being able to, augment, your style of play on a board game platform. I think like with niche products, I think there's definitely room because, these are also just tools. AR is just a tool. It's just, there's going to be different AR solutions for different experiences. So I think we're going just like with any other hardware device, we're going to see a lot of players in the space.
Awesome. Thank you, David. And I think we are out of time. So I'll leave the room open for a few more minutes, but I really appreciate you joining and having this Q&A with us. And the presentation was great. So thank you so much. Awesome.
Thanks.
Thank you, Alex, for joining. Yeah, really great. Really nice presentation. What are your thoughts on the humane AI